Assalamu alaikum everybody. My name is Nurulain Yazdani. I'm an EducationUSA advisor here at the Lahore office. Thank you for tuning in. We had Daud Nausham with us today, who is a current PhD student at University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Before I hand it over to him, I will give you a brief introduction about who we are and what we do as an organization. So, United States Education Foundation in Pakistan is basically a binational commission between the governments of Pakistan and United States. We here have a bunch of flagship programs, which is the Fulbright. Since you are all our potential PhD applicants, I'm sure you all have heard about it. We also have different standardized testing facilities available at each of our offices. We have offices in three main cities, Karachi, Lahore, and Islamabad. Um, in Pakistan, EducationUSA is just housed within USCFP. We're part of the US Department of State. Every information we get is directly from the government, so it is accurate, current, and comprehensive for anything and everything to do with higher education in the United States. Students who are registered with us can access our resources, and give them guidance on finding their best fit based on their situation and circumstances. These are a few services that we offer. We do different in-house sessions, free virtual sessions, which is the one you're attending right now. Around Fulbright season, we also do GRE sessions in person as well as virtual. So stay tuned for that. We have a library if you'd like to come in and study. All you have to do is just email us. But having said all of that, our most famous service happens to be one-on-one advising, where students who are registered with us are assigned an advisor, and they work with their assigned advisor throughout the application on a one-on-one basis. This is the email where you can reach out to us, lahore@educationusa.org. If you want to register with us, you can do that on www.educationusa.pk. Thank you for listening to this, and without any further delay, I'll hand it over to Daud.
Well, thank you very much. I'll just share my screen. Can you see my screen fine?
Yes.
Okay. So my presentation today is on doctoral studies in USA. However, if there are any other students who want to do a master's degree in USA, I think this information is equally applicable for them as well if they want to pursue a research master's. So it will be for both doctoral and master's studies, graduate studies in USA. Starting with my background, I'll tell you a little bit about my brief history, and then if you have any questions, you're welcome to send out in chat, and I can answer during the presentation, or we will have time after the presentation to answer the questions as well. So I did my bachelor's in mechanical engineering in 2017 from UT Lahore, and then I worked for a few years in Pakistan. I actually worked in FC College. That's where Prometric Center Lahore is. So I had an opportunity to get very close to Prometric Center and then get guidance from there, and then be able to work on my applications. And meanwhile, I was working in FC College as well. So I worked for 4 years after my bachelor's degree. This was more practical work, no research-oriented work, but in the same domain as my bachelor's degree. Then I applied for a PhD program directly after my bachelor's degree and came to University of Nebraska-Lincoln in a direct PhD program starting in 2021. While pursuing my PhD, I also enrolled for a master's degree and then completed the requirements and just graduated with a master's in last semester. And I'm still continuing as a PhD student and hoping to graduate with my PhD in the next year. So my master's degree is in architectural engineering, and I'm continuing my PhD in with my research focused in indoor air quality and building mechanical systems, and the program name is still architectural engineering. I might come back to this slide once again to answer one of the very frequently asked questions by students. And I'll tell you that question when I come back to the slide. So a brief outline of my presentation. I will talk about how to search for programs related to your major, and then what are the common application requirements in general for different programs, and then how to prepare a documentation. And since most of the students talk a lot about how to create your SOP, how to get your recommendation letters. So I've since this session is kind of we have limited time, so I'll try to cover most of the details. But I thought at least these two application materials I'll try to talk about these in a bit more detail, and we'll talk a little bit about funding situations as well. So, how to search your program? The first question, which program should I apply to? Does it have to be the same as my undergraduate degree? So, the answer to this question is that most commonly, what most of the students do is just apply to the major degree program they have done already. So if your bachelor's degree is in electrical engineering, a lot of students tend to apply in electrical engineering. But it doesn't have to be like that. If you have a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and you want to work on maybe uh, electronics in biomedical applications, which is still an electrical engineering related area, but it might be offered within the biomechanics program. So you can still specialize in that area. And in US, it's not frowned upon to pursue a degree which is not exactly the same as your undergraduate degree. So you can always apply to a master's in electrical engineering if you are an electrical engineering major, but you can also apply to other programs as well with which you have a research match. So, how to know if the program is right program for you? That's my second question. Uh, so, in order to determine that, you need to figure out if you have just done an undergrad degree, like I did. I only had a bachelor's degree when I applied for a PhD. So that depends upon what kind of courses you took in your bachelor's degree, and then based on what courses you liked or what class projects you did in your class, you can choose that this is the area of interest and this is what you want to pursue. And for example, if I did mechanical engineering and I worked in building construction sector, and I worked on building mechanical systems, which are still mechanical, which is still an area of mechanical engineering, but it's more applied in building industry. So now that if you know that this is the area you want to work in, then you try to find out where this area is offered. Is this offered in mechanical engineering programs? Is this offered in building engineering programs, or what program offers this kind of area? So it doesn't really have to be just a program name. You really don't have to be pursuing the master's in mechanical engineering or a PhD in mechanical engineering to be able to do a PhD in that area. So once you know that you did your undergrad in this subject and this is the area you want to do to work in, then you start to try finding universities which offer that area. So for example, if you are trying to focus on a certain area, you just try to find, how I used to start with is maybe try to find faculty profiles or the department on the university website. So once you find a department, then you go to the faculty profiles and try to check out different faculty working in the same area in which you want to pursue your PhD. And once you see that, yes, there are faculty working in the area you desire, then you can try to approach them. There are actually two methodologies. You can either directly apply to the university on their application portal, or you can contact the professor first and talk about your interest and tell them that this is what you have done, this is what you want to do. And then if the professor is interested, then they can always like tell you, oh yes, you can apply to the program. And usually professor is not the one doing the selection. It's the admission committee in US. So whenever you file an application, it goes to the admission committee, and then they'll have a meeting, and then they'll open up applications, and then If you already have identified an advisor for you, and you have already told him or her that I've put in an application, so when your application goes to the faculty, he or she will say that this is the student I would want to supervise. So you already have one person in the panel who can vouch for you. But he is not the only one making the decision. So you need to focus on all the application requirements and make sure that you are fulfilling all the application requirements to your best. So I'll go to the application requirements as well, what you need to do to be able to make a strong application. And one more question while searching for different programs, a lot of students ask that whether the university ranking matter. It kind of does and it does not as well. For a PhD program, uh, a lot of the times, university ranking does not matter a lot. Uh, in US, I've seen that all the universities have very strong collaborations with other research teams in other universities. So the overall university ranking may not be a very good indicator of what your program or your department is doing in that university. So the best thing while looking for a PhD program, I think, is to be able to find the best research match and be able to figure out that you can work very well with that prospective advisor of yours. Because your success in a PhD program depends largely on how your relations are with your advisor and how well you are able to work with your advisor, if you have a good communication or not. And it is also important to really figure out that this is really the kind of research you want to work on, because PhD is a long go. It takes like in US, the nominal duration is 5 years. I've seen students doing it for the sixth year as well. I've seen students graduating in four. So it really depends. So if you're spending about 5 years with some person, you really need to make sure that you have a good match and you are able to communicate well and have a good uh, mentor-mentee relationship so that you can keep progressing on your degree. So application requirements. Uh, these are the general requirements which most of the programs have. Uh, so firstly, you need to fill out an application form with the university, whichever university you want to apply to. And most of the applications will require you to provide your previous degrees and transcripts. So in order to apply for a PhD, as I stated earlier, you really don't need to have a master's degree. You only need to have bachelor's degree, which is like a must. Some of the universities do place requirement that we really need a master's degree to be able to continue to get admitted into a PhD, but most of the universities just let you get in with a bachelor's degree, even if they say that maybe we require bachelor's and master's degree. But sometimes if you try to talk to them and tell them that I only have a bachelor's degree, but I am interested in a PhD program directly, they might still consider you. So it's always good to check, because if your final goal is to get a PhD program, get into a PhD program and be a researcher, and you know that very well, then maybe you can just directly get into the PhD program. But if you still need time to figure out whether the area you want to work in is is that what you will like, or if you're thinking of just stopping off a master's degree, then it's better to get into a master's instead of PhD. Another question, funding is my later topic, but usually master's degrees are not fully funded in USA. There might be some cases where master's degrees could be funded, but they have to be, because there are two types of master's degrees. These could be coursework-based master degrees or research-oriented master's degrees. So if you are pursuing a research-based master's degree, then there is a possibility that you may get full funding, uh, which is still lower than the possibility of getting funding than a PhD student. So this is something you might also need to think about when applying for the programs. Then the third thing is getting all your standardized test score ready. Most of the programs uh, for PhD or masters, they require GRE or GMAT based on your previous major, and also IELTS or TOEFL. Uh, they both are widely accepted now, so it just depends on what you want to pursue. So a lot of students ask this, whether I what score of GRE do they need? What minimum score for IELTS do they need? So for that, I think the best way to figure that out is first figuring out your program you want to apply and check uh, the minimum scores required for each program you want to apply into. Usually, if I'm talking about IELTS score, I think usually 6.5 is like a bare minimum you need to have in each band to be able to get admission in a US university. Some universities may offer lower than that as well, but it's kind of because if you are a PhD student, you might be a teaching assistant as well to fund your degree. So for being a teaching assistant, you often need a higher language proficiency. So maybe 7 or even more, but I think 6.5 is usually the bare minimum. So then statement of purpose is also required to uh, the purpose of statement of purpose or a personal statement is to help the admission committee understand your story, what you have done, and then who are you and everything. I'll talk a little bit more about statement of purpose later, so I'm just stopping right now here. Uh, and then we need 3 recommendation letters from the faculty who really know you well. The last 2 points, I kind of changed the color for these in my presentation because these are not required. Writing samples, some of the programs do require or recommend that you submit a writing sample in your application or a research proposal. And some programs may also require research publications as well, but most of the programs do not. So a lot of students tend to spend so much time writing research proposals and trying to publish and not never even applying to a US university, thinking they might not be able to get into a US university. I got into my program without a writing sample, research proposal, or any research publications. I had work experience related to my area, but I did not have any research background before coming to the US degree program. And doctoral programs or even any graduate programs, master programs in USA do not have an expectation that you are already a researcher. The programs are structured in a way to convert you into a researcher if they are, but they are not expecting you to have all that research background beforehand. If you already have, that's a plus, but that's not required mostly. So preparing documentation, one of the steps uh, that takes some time is maybe degree attestations from HEC. I don't know, this might have gotten better. I think HEC now offers online degree attestations as well. So when I got it, it was a little bit more time consuming, I believe. But this is something you can do after you get admitted. So this is really not uh, something you need to worry about at a very early stage. What you need to worry about is taking your standardized testing scores, both GRE, if the university requires it. Some of the universities may not require it, but I strongly suggest that you do GRE or GMAT if it's required by most of the majors in your programs. It will just open up more opportunities for you to apply into different programs. Otherwise, you would be restricted into applying into just a few programs. And I think one of the most important parts of your application is your statement of purpose. And the second thing is recommendations from the professors. I will try to talk a little bit about recommendation letters as well later. So I'll go ahead right now. Statement of purpose. So I try to outline some of the questions, and you may get, I don't know, you might probably be able to get these slides. So if you want to create your statement of purpose and haven't done that ever, or even if you want to just recheck your statement of purpose and try to make sure that it answers all the questions most of the universities would want to be answered from your statement of purpose, then you can look at these and try to answer all these questions. First is who are you? What's your academic background? And why did you choose what you are doing? So this will tell them that about you, just how did you start? So, and then they would want to know what's your journey? What did you do to get there? If you did a bachelor's degree, what kind of subjects are you interested in? And why are you interested in those areas? Did you do any internship in that area? Did you did any research in that area that got you interested in that specific area? Or did you do any class projects? So you specifically need to talk about what you did and how did you get there. And whatever specific areas you are interested in, do you have any research experience or do you have any practical experience in that area? If you do, highlight those experiences. And don't just tell them that I'm interested in developing nanofibers for biomedical applications. This is something everyone can write. You need to tell them why you got interested in developing nanofibers, what kind of industry or research experience you have, what did you do that got you interested in that, or do you have any, if you have any specific skill set, then try to mention that in your statement of purpose as well. Then when you search for universities or professors, then when you start to search for a specific university department, how did you find that university or lab? And uh, if you found that, why do you think that university or lab is a good match for you? And the answer is not that the university ranking is third in the world or 100 or 80th in the QS ranking. This is not a good answer. Or don't tell them that your research is top notch or your university facilities are too good or I really like those university facilities. This is all the things they already know about themselves. They know they are really good in their research. What you need to tell them about is that I have done this research, I have worked on this thing, and this is the result I got from my research. And I found out that you did the same thing, or you use the similar methodology in your research. And I would be interested to take this further and try this experimentation on this subject area. And that's the reason I'm interested in your lab, because this is only being offered at this in this lab or at this lab as well. So when they'll hear that you're really trying to be specific about your research and telling them that this research is something you are really interested in and you might have done some of the work on it already, then they would surely be interested in you as a student as well. So so the answer to this question is, whenever you answer this question, that why do you think the university lab is good match for you? It's not the ranking and stuff. It's about the research. That's what the professors are most interested in. Then why do you think the professor is a good match for you? What is the professor currently doing in his research area? So in order to answer this question, you need to find the department page first, then go to the faculty profiles and find out those faculty whose research is really relevant to you. You're not just trying to make it relevant, it is really relevant. And then tell them that this is what you want to do. And then this will be a good answer for this question, that this research is which this professor has done, like even if he has done it in the past few years ago, and he kind of applied some methodologies and then did some research, you tell him that I did the same work using this tool or this statistical software and use this model. You just have to be very specific about what you did, and then you will be able to catch his or her attention. Then what motivated you to choose that specific area? This has to link with some of your experience as well, which what you have done in the past, or some of the subjects you studied in your undergrad degree, or a professor who taught them very well or help you through a research project in your bachelor's degree or a master's degree. So this, you need to relate it with your previous research as well. So, and then you will also need to connect the dots. Uh, if you can understand that we started with what's your background, what you have done by now, what research you did, and what tools did you use. Now that you have told them about your background, what research you did, now you have to talk about future. What do you think this research will lead you to? What are your long-term plans? What are your short-term plans? And when you'll connect all these dots, what you've done in past, what was your motive, where are you now and where will this research lead you if you get into their PhD programs, then they will be able to see that all these connections and determine that you may be a good applicant for the PhD program. So your short and long term plans could be that in the short term, you want to really solve maybe a global problem, or even if it's not a global problem, it could be a research problem that you want to answer this research question. The long term plan could be that you want to take this research to a higher level. You really don't have to. You really just need to convince them that you really want to work on this research. It is very possible that you may never be working on this on the research what you are proposing, because in USA, uh, all PhDs are funded through a project, and the project determines what your PhD title will be. So by proposing what you want to do, you are only trying to elaborate that you have a specific skill set which you can apply to this research situation and get it done. And so this basically just tells the admission committee or helps them determine that you could be a good applicant. There is a possibility that you might work on that research. There is a possibility you might not. So you just need to be able to explain that to them. And then long-term plans could be that you want to work as a researcher in a national lab, or you want to be a professor, do teaching as well as research. So this is something you want to do in 5 or 10 years. So if you answers all these questions in a sequence, I think you should have a very good statement of purpose. And usually the statement of purpose should not be longer than 1.5 pages. That's what we recommend, because if you start making it longer, I think it starts getting cluttered. So and also when the admission committee is reading those applications, they only like spend 30 seconds or 1 minute on each of the statement of purpose, look briefly through it. And if it's too long, they might not get to the very specific areas which you are trying to talk about. So this is just my personal recommendation, that just keep it. Maybe if you have a Times New Roman font with a 12-point size, just keep it 1.5 pages, not go longer than, unless you really have some very good research background and you're trying to elaborate everything, then maybe go to 2 pages, otherwise stay in that length. Then a little bit of recommendation letters. So first thing to understand is, what is the purpose of the recommendation letters? So the purpose or the motive for the admission committee to ask for recommendation letters is to understand what kind of people have you worked with and what do they think about you. Not personally, what do they think about your research? What have you done with them? So one of the biggest mistakes most of the students do, which I've done for so long and I repent on it, is that they get a generic recommendation letter from a professor, and who would write for you that he's a very excellent, he's top of his class, he got A grade in his course, and then he's very punctual, obedient, and I recommend him for your university for the program at your university. First thing, he's just writing very generic information. Obedient, honest. This is something everyone can write. Then second thing most of the students try to get is, I recommend him for your program at your university. They don't mention the name of program. They don't mention the name of the university. Whenever I talk about a strong recommendation letter, it has to be program specific and university specific. So you really need to talk about what program are you applying to and which university. So you'll have to mention the name of both programs and university, and also the professor needs to talk about what really you did with him. For example, I took a class on heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems, and I was assigned a project that maybe design or do a cooling load calculations for this room or this cafeteria. That's a project. You can I'm sure everyone gets small projects like this in the classes. Just try to talk about that project if that's relevant to your research, or come up with the project which is only relevant, not irrelevant projects. So if you find that this project could be relevant, then just talk about that I did this project with this professor, and that's what I did. These are the results I got. That's what professor should tell about you in his letter, and then tell him that his work methodology is good, and maybe write a few generic things as well based on the project you did, and then conclude on basis of that, and also make a recommendation to the department that uh, he's interested in this department at this university. I think the reason why most students don't want to write department and university name on the recommendation letter is my next question. Uh, how do I get recommendations for each program I apply for? Because I noticed that most of the professors, even in Pakistan, they are oftentimes busy and they might not want to provide you so many letters, because if you are applying for one program that needs 3 recommendation letters, and usually students who apply for one round, they go for at least six different university applications, which would mean 18 recommendation letters in total if they are applying for 6 at altogether. So uh, I think you should still not get a generic letter, because this will not help you in any way. You just keep applying, and this will not lead you to getting selected. So you should still mention the name of the university, department, and specific research you did, and maybe try different professors and try to like be polite with them. Don't expect them to write recommendation letters for you, because if you are expecting them, they might give you one letter, or maybe if the professor is very nice, they can write it 2 or 3 times, not more than that. What I suggest doing is maybe create a draft of 1-page letter based on what you think the professor might be thinking about you, and send that draft to the professor and tell them that I just drafted this for you, and you're welcome to make any changes as you like on based on what he thinks about you. And then he can make those changes, and he will be more than willing to send that recommendation multiple times. This way you can still have specific recommendation letters, and the professor would still be willing to at least send out a few more recommendations than he would if you just expect him to write a letter. So a little bit about funding as well. Uh, oh, I'm sorry, I did not update this slide. So for the funding, most of the degree programs in USA, if they are PhD degree programs, they're already fully funded. So in order to when you connect with the professor, you just need to tell him or her that you are interested in this program and this research. You really when they select you for a PhD program, it's understood that they will provide you funding during that PhD program. If you are a master's applicant, then then maybe just ask the professor first about the funding, or maybe just tell him that I'm interested in this program, and when he or she starts responding, then you can also try to talk about funding situation. But usually there are a few students who get funding throughout the program, master's program as well. So there are 2 ways you can be funded for your degree program, whether in master's or PhD. In USA, there is no such thing as a scholarship. There is another equivalent like called a fellowship, but most of the degrees are funded through graduate assistantships. So there are 2 types of graduate assistantships. It could be a teaching assistantship, or it could be a graduate research assistantship. If if you are hired as a PhD student and the professor has a project for you already, then the professor will hire you as a graduate research assistant. So as a research assistant, you will work for that professor for 20 hours a week, and they will pay all your tuition fees. They will pay you health insurance, at least a part of that health insurance, and then they will pay you a salary as well. And depending upon the state you are in, it could range from maybe $2,000 to $3,000 per month. So
Once you're in a program and you are a research assistant, you don't really need to be think about funding situation anymore. So most projects are like 2 to 3 years. So once the project is done, then most often they most of the PhD programs guarantee or at least say that they will provide 5 years of funding. So if you are funded through a research assistantship for 3 years and you have 2 more years left in your program, then and the project has ended, then most of the time the department would hire you as a graduate teaching assistant, and they will pay you the same salary, and this will still pay all your tuition fees, and you will work the same 20 hours with the department as a teaching assistant and help with assignments, teaching classes, or grading and stuff, and get the same salary and everything. So whether you are a teaching assistant or you are a research assistant, you will be funded throughout your academic degree for at least 5 years. And sometimes you can even get funded for beyond 5 years as well, if the department still has resources to provide you money. So this was a little bit about funding and just a few frequently asked questions by different students. This is the most commonly asked question, that my GPA is low, can I get admission with full funding? The answer is yes. Most of the PhD or MS PhD applications, they do not really require you to, they just require you to be at above a 3.0 threshold. But when I mean that your GPA is low, I'm thinking about even lower than 3 GPA. So you can get admitted even less than that. You really have to have a very good application package to be able to convince them that you could be a good applicant. So what I mean by application package is having a very strong statement of purpose, your recommendation letters, and everything they require for good test scores as well. Then if you have a balanced package, then GPA is not the only consideration. It's one of the considerations in the application process, but not everything. My GPA was 2.9 when I got admitted into a fully funded PhD program. So I can tell you from experience. My BS and MS degree from a different field, I think I also already answered that question, that your BS and MS degree don't need to be in the same field. As I mentioned in my very first slide about me, I got my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and master's in architectural, PhD in architectural engineering. The research area is still the same, but the degree title doesn't need to be the same. Should I take IELTS or TOEFL? This is also one of the questions asked by so many students, because a lot of students try to get around this. They don't want to do IELTS or TOEFL. So the answer is you should not go that route. There might be a few universities which may accept you without IELTS or TOEFL, but you will be restricting your opportunities then. You will only be restricted to applying to just a few universities, and there's a big chance that you might waste your years of applying. So I strongly suggest you do IELTS or TOEFL the very first go you can. And another question a lot of students have asked me in the past, can I get in admission in US university with full funding without GRE and IELTS? So there could be a few students who might have done that, but just the same answer, you may have just a very short pool of universities where you would be able to apply. So just don't restrict your opportunities. Try to do GRE and IELTS as soon as you can. And you really don't need to have a top-notch score. You just need to have a reasonable score to be able to get admission to the university. And you need to check those requirements from the university's website. So I think that's all from me. And if you have more questions, I'm willing to answer that.
Thank you, Daud, for a very thorough presentation. I'm sure it was really helpful for all the attendees today. We have a bunch of questions coming in, so let's get started. First question is it necessary to have a work experience before applying for PhD? I'm asking because for Fulbright, I've seen that students, that selected students have 3 to 4 years of experience. Your thoughts on it would be great. Thanks.
So I think I may not be the best person to comment on Fulbright, but regarding general admissions in USA, because Fulbright is just one part of going to USA through this program, but you can always apply to so many universities directly. So for, as I mentioned in one of my slides, so these are the application requirements to apply for different programs in USA. most of the programs, PhD or masters, they do not require any work experience. If you have a very relevant work experience, especially if it's a very relevant research experience, that could be a plus, but that's still not required. So those who don't have any kind of work experience, they are still very fine. They can just go through all these application requirements, fulfill these requirements, and then they are good to apply.
Thank you for the insight. Next question comes in that I am an MPhil in chemistry, but I have no publications while have experience of teaching. Am I eligible to apply for PhD in education instead of chemistry? Also, can you shed some light on the importance of publications as well?
So I think I also try to answer this in this slide of mine, that research publications and research proposal or writing sample, they are sometimes required by some of the programs. So it could be a little program specific, but in general, most of the programs, even in chemistry, I don't think that they require publications as a dead end application requirement. So even in, I think since chemistry is science as well, engineering is more applied science, their application process is much similar. So even for me, I never had any research publications, nor did I write any research proposal. And I think that for chemistry or other science majors, this is true as well. You just need to have at least some projects or some related work experience, which really doesn't need to have, which really doesn't need to be like a research experience. You just need to have some experience, telling them that if you have some break in between, then you work in that area or you still continued, that should be fine. Yeah, you really don't need to have a research publication.
Next question is, do you need IELTS/TOEFL even if your undergrad and master's degree has been from University of London?
That's a very specific question, being from University of London. I think there are many universities which will offer an exemption based on a previous degree at a university which is in a country where English is the first language. So I think you will still need to check with the university. There may be a possibility if the university is in a country where the English is the first language, then they might give you an exemption. But I would still suggest that if it's getting like problematic, like talking to each university, I would suggest just do the IELTS.
Thank you. Next question is, what is the ideal time to contact professor for PhD position for fall or winter term?
So for fall semester, if you, right now it's fall 24. So if you want to apply for fall 2025, then most of the applications should be submitted before December 15th. The priority deadline will be, it's not a hard and fast deadline for all universities, because it could vary from university to university, but most of the universities will have their deadlines as December 15th or early January. So end of 24 or start of 25 would be the time you need to really put in your applications. And if you are trying to contact professors, the best time to contact professors would be September 2024, so that they are already settled in the semester and they have some time to look up their emails. So I think next month would be the best time to contact professors to start in fall 2025.
Thank you. What if you're a mother and have dependents, that is children? Do US universities help with that?
So the university will not pay you any extra money for dependents. So they will give you your stipend, which will vary from, like I already said, could be 2,000, could be 3,000, depending upon the state you are living in. 3,000 is kind of a more stipend, I'm telling. It would be something in the mid range. So that money is enough for one person to live and survive very well. But I've seen people living with families as well, like with a spouse and maybe one child as well. So it will be kind of very tough for you, but it's still possible. But university will not pay you any extra amount for that. I think Fulbright may have some extra allowance for that, but I'm not sure. I'm not very very good person to get guidance for Fulbright.
Perfect. Next question is, I have research papers on Middle East, Central Asian states, and on the role of America in Pakistan. These are on various topics. So does it affect my selection of next PhD research?
So as I already mentioned that when you apply for a program, you need to elaborate that you have a research capability and you are able to conduct research and you are really interested in that area. And all that research capability is demonstrated through your SOP, or if you have publications that's what demonstrate that you have that capability to conduct research. The research doesn't need to be the very same as the program you're applying to. So even if it's a bit different research, you can always justify that I was interested in, now I'm interested in this area. But I'm sure there should be some linkages between research so that you can justify, or even if there isn't, you will need to have good reason to justify that, and you should be good. It's still a plus, it's not against you.
Thank you. I'm 42. Can I still apply for PhD? In general, is age a relevant concern to get funded PhD positions?
I'm not very sure on this one. I think it should not be a problem, but yeah, I think you should still need to check out university application requirements. I've never seen any university's application saying that you need to be a certain age to be able to apply to their program. So I think you should be able to apply and get selected.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I know you've said this before, but can you please say it again, because I'm getting a ton of questions if students can apply directly for PhD after their bachelor's, just to make it clear once again for students who tuned in late.
Yes, you can directly apply after a bachelor's degree. If you have some research experience, that's best. If you don't, you still are in a good shape to apply as long as you fulfill all these application requirements, which I've shown in the slide. So yes, that's what I did. I got into a PhD program directly after my bachelor's degree. And if you later decide to pursue master's, which I did, I was not required to do a master's. You can just do your PhD directly, and it will be recognized the very same as doing master's and PhD, because it will be a longer program for you. You will need to do some extra coursework since you have not done any graduate level coursework. So once you do that, you are the same as the other applicant who did a master's and PhD.
Thank you. Is it worth reapplying to a university that rejected you in the last intake?
I'm not sure why would you want to apply to the same university if you're really interested in the same that research area. I think it would be a good idea to check for the same research area in many other universities, because I think US has like 4,300 universities in total. So if you have that big pool, why would you want to go to a university that rejected you in the first go? Or there could be one situation where you would want to reapply, is that somehow the professor was willing to advise you and you had a very good research match as well, but his funding did not come through that year. And if he thinks that he will get his funding for you this year, then you should probably apply again. Otherwise, I think it's just better to go on with other universities as well.
Another question comes in. I have a very good GPA, work experience, teaching experience, and published research papers, but my GRE score is 292. Do you recommend to retake the GRE for PhD program?
I think it's better if you retake it. 292, I don't know what's your split and what's your major, because for engineering programs, usually they focus more on quantitative score. For non-engineering, they focus more on verbal score. So without knowing that, if you really have a good quantitative score and you are trying to do engineering, then you may still try to use that score. But I would still suggest that you redo your GRE and get at least 300 maybe. Because students, graduate applications are really very competitive. A lot of students even get 320. I would not ask you to really try to do 320, 30 or even more. I think even the GRE scale has now changed as well. So just try to get redo it, and I'm sure you'll get it if you have such good background. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So students with really low GPA, like this student who message has a 2.1, would you recommend of any ways to improve their application otherwise? And are they even eligible to apply for a PhD program?
So I had a 2.9 when I applied for a PhD directly. Honestly, I did get rejected from some of the master's programs as well. And then I applied for PhD because masters were not fully funded. I was hoping to have my program fully funded, so I applied for PhD. But I still had a bit low GPA because 3 is usually the cutoff, but I feel like 2.5 is kind of very far. So I would suggest if this is your bachelor's GPA, undergrad GPA, then I would suggest that you do a master's degree first and try to elaborate with maybe some publications and at least get 3+ GPA and then apply for a PhD.
Thank you for that information. When you say students can directly apply after a bachelor's program, do you mean the 2-year BA that we have in Pakistan, or do you mean the 4-year undergraduate degree? Because oftentimes we get this question where students are like, I have a 2-year bachelor's and a 2 years MPhil. Are they eligible to apply for a PhD?
So I think for when we talk about bachelor's degree, in US education terms, it's a 4-year undergraduate degree. So if you have a 2 years bachelor's degree, that's considered an associate degree. So using an associate degree, you may be eligible to apply for a bachelor's program in USA, but not for a master's or PhD. You really need to have 16 years of education to be able to apply for a master's or a PhD program. So I hope this answers your question.
Thank you for that. Another question is, I'm in 3rd year of BS program. I want to know for scholarships, do I need to apply right now or should I try after graduation?
I think it could be a good idea to start searching for right now and maybe apply in your final year so that you will have your admission results at the time you graduate or sometime near that.
Another question is, can you please provide a brief overview about admission fee, tuition fee, and what does cost of living look like?
So, yeah, sure. It varies a lot. It depends upon the kind of university you are in, and is it a state university or is it a private school? And also which state you are located in, because the living expenses vary from state to state. And there are some states which may pay you a lower stipend, but their living expense is lower. So in some states where the living expenses is higher, they will give you higher stipend. So you might think that you're getting more salary, but it's still the same because you're spending more on the basic essentials. So it kind of varies a lot. I can maybe give you an idea about a state university. Usually in state universities, the application, so first application fees are usually around $50 to $100. And then tuition fees per semester are around 15 to 17,000 for 9 credits, which is a full-term study. Even if I say $15,000 per semester, so that would mean 30,000 in tuition fees, and that's the same you need for your stipend. So in total, I think you need $60,000 per year. And if you are in a master's program, you will need to elaborate that you will have those $60,000 for your second year of study as well. So that's the total amount of funding you will need to be able to apply for a student visa if you are trying to come for a master's degree, which is not funded.
Thank you for that. Another question is that a student has she done her master's in 2005 and is currently doing her MPhil. Can she apply for PhD, like with that study gap?
If you did something during all this gap, which is relevant to your major, I think you should have no problem in elaborating that this is a work experience I have during all this time, and now I'm doing my MPhil and doing this research. It creates a very good story. So I don't think a problem with that.
Thank you. Muhammad David is asking, can I write all my bachelor journey in my personal statement, or does it have to be program relevant things?
Actually, I think I tried to mention all these questions. So it actually starts with your journey. The first thing is your journey, and maybe it should not be 2 pages because the whole length of the statement of purpose is 1.5 pages. So it should be 1 paragraph. Maybe the very first paragraph, 5 to 6 lines, you can talk about all your journey in those sentences.
Another question is the student who was earlier talking about retaking GRE, he wants to study international relations. And she said that I have checked the normal rate of GRE score is 295. I have same score on quant and qualitative. Now, what would you recommend? Retaking the GRE?
If the requirement is 295 and you are 292, you are still below the requirement, but since it's closed, then I would suggest then you can just apply. But please make sure that all the other application elements, because as I mentioned earlier, GPA is not the only consideration, GRE is not the only consideration, IELTS is not the only consideration. It's the whole application package. So make sure you present your whole application in a very good way. You try to provide all the documentation they require, write a very good SOP, and get very program and university specific and focused recommendation letters for your whole application package. And once you have it, I think you should be in a good shape.
Students are asking for your slides. Would you be happy to share the slides?
Sure, I can share those.
If you could just email it to me, and then whoever wants can email on the email I am going to write in the chat box now. And this session will be up on our YouTube channel real soon. But if anybody wants the link ASAP, please feel free to drop an email on the email mentioned in the chat right now. And with that, thank you so much, Daud Nausham, for a wonderful session. I'm sure the attendees learned a lot. Thank you for your time, and thank you to those of you who tuned in today.
Yeah, thank you very much for conducting it. Yeah.
Thank you. Allah Hafiz.